George Edmund Hayes, 1880 to 1960. George Edmund Hayes was the first African American to earn his PhD from Columbia. He was a pioneer sociologist, a social worker, a policy expert, and he was a co-founder of the National Urban League. Born in 1880 to Lewis and Mattie Haynes in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, George Haynes was the oldest of two children of a domestic worker mother and a day laborer father. He was educated in a segregated and unequal system of Pine Bluff, so his family eventually moved to Hot Springs, Arkansas to pursue a better educational opportunity for the children. When Haynes was 13, he attended the Chicago World's Fair. While he was there, he was a part of discussions about the problems affecting African Americans. This is where he first heard about the Negro problem. Haynes' experience at the World Fair motivated him to pursue a higher education. With the help of his mother, he enrolled at the Agricultural and Mechanical College for Negroes at Normal, Alabama. After a year, he transferred to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, where he eventually earned his bachelor's degree in 1903. Right after Haynes earned his master's degree from Yale in 1904, because Haynes was such a great student, Yale awarded him the academic scholarship. Haynes in 1905 began his career at Young Men's Christian Association (YMCA), working with African American youth in the association's Colored Man department. In 1905 and 1906, with the help and the support of the YMCA, he toured the South and visited almost all of African American colleges to assess black higher education. During this time, Haynes met and married Elizabeth Ross, who was engaged in similar work for African American women, and Haynes will later on have a son by the name of George Jr. George Haynes' wife, Elizabeth Ross Haynes, was a reformer, author, and political activist. Ross Haynes was at the forefront of developing institutional resources for young African American women seeking better employment and living conditions. While working at the YMCA, Haynes enrolled at the University of Chicago during the summers of 1906 and 1907. While Haynes was studying at the University of Chicago, Haynes became interested in social problems affecting black migrants from the South. This interest led him to the New York School of Philanthropy, where he graduated in 1910. 2 years later, he received a PhD from Columbia University, and he was the first African American to do so. While Haynes was in New York, he found himself at the beginning of the Great Migration of African Americans from the South to the North. The migration had become an important issue for many social scientists. Haynes became involved with many organizations that hoped to ease the transition of the people coming from the South to the city. Organizations included the Association for the Protection of Colored Women, the Committee for Improving the Industrial Conditions of the Negroes of New York, and a Committee on Urban Conditions among Negroes. In 1910, Haynes and a white reformer, Ruth Standish Baldwin, brought these three organizations together into the National League on Urban Conditions, the NUL. Haynes became the first executive secretary of the NUL. During this time, he used his work with black migrants as a basis for his 1912 book, The Negro at Work in New York, which was later published by Columbia University. Haynes also developed the concept of interracial clinics. These clinics brought together people of both races for mediated discussion on a church and community level, and also was proved as an effective means for diffusing racial tensions in America. After finishing up the book, Haynes was hired by Fisk University. Between 1913 and 1917, he splits his time between New York and Nashville, working directly on the black community issues, mostly related along the Great Migration, while teaching the next generation of social scientists who would succeed him. In 1918, President Woodrow Wilson had taken notice of Haynes' work and hired him to serve as the first African American selected to a sub-cabinet level position in the capacity of the Director of Negro Economics of the U.S. Department of Labor. Haynes was to advise Wilson all matters affecting Negroes. While at the Department of Labor, Haynes conducted surveys and provided analysis and recommendations to the U.S. government on the best way to utilize the new northern black industrial workers. Haynes and Emmett Scott, who worked in a similar capacity in the War Department during the period, were the highest ranked black federal employees and the first to have influence at the cabinet level. In 1921, Haynes became the first executive secretary of the Department of Race Relations for the Federal Council of the Churches of Christ in America. Here he helped apply the study and analysis to the question of race and religion in American society for the council until he retired. In 1930, Haynes conducted surveys for the YMCA of South Africa. Haynes retired from his work in 1947, but even when he was retired, Haynes remained involved in race relations work while teaching courses at City College in New York, including one of the first courses on African American history presented in a predominantly white institution. While still teaching courses at a predominantly white institution, Haynes in 1948 was appointed to be the first board of trustees of the new State University of New York SUNY system. He also published a book called Africa, the Continent of the Future in 1950. For the last 9 years of his life, Haynes taught at the City College of New York and served as an officer of the American Committee on Africa. George Edmund Haynes died in New York City in 1960. Many of his manuscripts and papers are preserved in the George Edmund Haynes collection at Yale University and can also be found at Fisk University. George Haynes spent a lot of his time advocating for African Americans. Haynes even advocated for schools to produce more black social workers in the field. His practice was very inspirational to many social workers around the world.